So today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating thought experiment. It comes from a piece of political fiction called Trump's Third Term, and it poses this powerful question. What would actually happen if a sitting president decided to publicly challenge the 22nd Amendment? You know, the very rule that says they only get 2 terms. The story kicks off with this really powerful idea. It's suggesting that the biggest test for any country's laws isn't some outside threat. Nope. It's a moment of intense self-reflection, and the whole story we're about to walk through is built around that single test. Okay, so here's where it all begins. It starts with a challenge to precedent, a primetime address from the Oval Office that's about to set off a constitutional firestorm. Now, in this speech, the fictional president he's incredibly strategic. He doesn't come out and say, let's break the law. Instead, he calls for a national conversation. The argument he makes is that this amendment, which comes from a totally different era, was really meant to stop a tyrant, not to limit the choice of modern-day voters. And this right here, this is the absolute core of the argument. The whole proposal is framed not as some kind of power grab, but as a move to empower you, the voter. It's presented as an evolution of democracy, giving people more choice, not less. The speech gets really clever here, using history to back itself up. It points to George Washington, who turned down a third term as an act of humility. And then it points to Franklin Roosevelt, who accepted one because it was an act of necessity during a massive global crisis. The subtle suggestion here is that both of these choices, in their own time, were seen as acts of patriotism. And this is a really crucial piece of the strategy. The speech goes out of its way to say, hey, this is not a campaign announcement. It's just an invitation for a debate. It's basically putting the ball in the court of Congress, the states, and ultimately the American people. As you can probably imagine, this speech just sets off an absolute firestorm. So the White House immediately has to move to clarify its position in what you can bet was a very heated press briefing. You can just see the message discipline here from the White House. The official stance is that this is just an exploration, not a directive. They keep hammering that point home. They promise total transparency, a 6-month timeline, and, this is the most important part, that any change has to follow the full constitutional process. No shortcuts, no executive orders. So the stage is set, and the entire nation is just holding its breath. The reaction to the speech is immediate, it's intense, and boy, is it divided. And you see this split in public opinion just instantly. On one side, you have the view of the fictional Ohio trucker, who's basically saying, look, this is common sense. If people want him, let the people decide. But on the other side, you've got the view that this isn't smart politics, it's a dangerous game of constitutional chicken. And of course, the media just pours gasoline on the fire, reflecting and amplifying this deep division. One side frames this whole thing as a moment of liberation. They're calling it democracy unchained. The other side frames it as a totally unprecedented and maybe dangerous challenge to the very foundations of the system. And it's not just on the street or on TV. The experts are going at it too. You have the fictional Harvard professor who says, yeah, legally you can change the amendment, but we have to think about precedent. Meanwhile, the pundit on TV is saying this completely redefines the whole idea of checks and balances. So this isn't just talk anymore. It spills out into the real world. Protests start forming. You see signs that say, trust the people, right next to signs that say, 2 terms only. The entire world is watching. And you even have key institutions like the Pentagon feeling the need to come out and remind everyone where their loyalty lies, with the Constitution. So with all this chaos, you might be asking, how would you even do this? Like, what's the actual process for changing the Constitution? Well, the story makes it really clear. The path has a high bar, and it was designed that way on purpose. This slide just lays out what a steep climb this is. It's like trying to climb Everest. First, you need a 2/3 supermajority in both the House and the Senate just to get the proposal off the ground. But then comes an even higher bar. 3/4 of all the states, that's 38 states, have to agree to ratify it. It's a process that basically demands a massive nationwide consensus. So faced with this monumental task, the system in this fictional story does what it's designed to do. It responds. Lawsuits are filed right away. Congress calls emergency hearings to start digging into every single angle of this proposal. Now, the story doesn't wrap this all up with a nice little bow. It leaves us in this unwritten final chapter, the morning after, with the fictional nation just staring into this moment of profound uncertainty. 72 hours. That's it. As a sign of just how serious this fictional crisis has become, the Supreme Court agrees to hear arguments on the whole thing within just 72 hours. To give you some perspective, that is lightning speed for the Supreme Court. That's the judicial equivalent of hitting the emergency button. And this is such a critical point in the narrative. Even under all this incredible political stress, the core institutions are shown to be working. Yeah, the markets are jumpy, but it's not chaos. And the military is clear about its allegiance. The system is definitely bending, but it isn't breaking. This line, which is found in the story, wow, it just captures the whole conflict perfectly. The line represents the fixed rules, the term limits that give us stability. The circle represents the democratic process, which is supposed to be complete and reflect the will of the people. And the big question is, can you actually have both? And that's where we land. The story doesn't give you the answer. It leaves us with the exact same question that was posed in that fictional Oval Office address. And that's what makes this whole thing more than just a story. It's a really deep thought experiment about power, about precedent, and about democracy itself.